morning and good afternoon, everyone, and happy International Women's Day. My name is Cristina Manfre, and I'm the Global Gender Director at TechnoServe, and I'm dialing in from our offices in Arlington, Virginia. International Women's Day is celebrated annually on March 8th to commemorate the cultural, political, and socioeconomic achievements of women. Every year there's a theme, and in 2022, the theme is Break the Bias. This particular theme invites us to imagine a gender-equal world, a world free of bias, stereotypes, and discrimination, a world that is diverse, equitable, and inclusive, a world where difference is valued and celebrated. It's a call to all of us to come together to forge women's equality and to collectively break the bias. At TechnoServe, we recognize the vital role women and men in all their diversity play in driving economic progress and strive to build inclusive and competitive markets for all people as entrepreneurs, farmers, and employees. While we work with all people, we pay close attention to women specifically because research shows that if women participated as fully as men in our economies, then $28 trillion could be added to annual GDP. In agriculture, when women and men have access to the same resources, you can increase agricultural output tremendously, thereby making it possible to reduce hunger and poverty. All this has positive impacts on the well-being of women themselves and spillover effects on children, men, communities, and as the data showed, economies as well. As an example, I want to tell you just a little bit about Ruth Nabatanzi. And I think we're going to show a picture of Ruth in a moment. Ruth is in Uganda, and she went from not being able to afford an education to breaking barriers as a successful welder, thanks to the opportunity to gain the right to skills and pursue her ambition. Now she earns over $33 a day, an impressive increase from the $1 or $2 she was earning before. Today, we're going to talk to two women who helped to make a difference by serving as TechnoServe Fellows in Botswana in 2018. I'm pleased to introduce you to Haley Lierman and Dora Heng. While in Botswana, they both provided support for TechnoServe's Tokafala program. This program helps hundreds of entrepreneurs overcome challenges in Botswana and develop the business skills needed to build thriving, sustainable enterprises. The program is still running today. In its current phase, it is reaching just under 900 entrepreneurs. Among those 900 entrepreneurs, we have about 540 women. That's 60%. This is up from about 38% women in 2018 when Dora and Haley were there. We're thrilled to share this space and Dora and Haley's stories of breaking the bias in Botswana with you today. So before we get started, we'd love to hear from you about where you're tuning in. Please drop your location into the chat, and I invite Dora and Haley to do the same. And if you've had the experience of breaking any gender biases in your life, please drop those experiences in the chat too. Actually, I'm going to have Dora and Haley tell us where you are dialing in from because, oh, Haley, you did manage to write that into the chat. If you'd like to take yourselves off of mute at this point, that would be great. Nigeria, welcome everybody. Let's see, Clearwater, Florida, Jackson, New Jersey, Colorado Springs. This is great. Well, welcome everybody. I hope your day has started off well. All right. Haley and Dora, thanks again for joining me today. I wanted to kick it off with an open question so that our viewers and listeners can get a sense of what it was like to be a TechnoServe Fellow and your experience. So can you both tell us a little bit about your experience as a fellow, what inspired you to join TechnoServe as a fellow? What was the work that you did in Botswana? And how about we start with Dora?
Yeah, and thank you again, Cristina, for welcoming me to the panel. I'm very excited to join the conversation around this topic about women empowerment and really breaking the bias. So why TechnoServe? I think a little bit about me. I grew up in Singapore and I came to America for college and for work. So I think I've always had this upbringing that allowed me to soak in the benefits of development that has been unequally distributed around the world. And when I'm thinking about how best to, use a skill set to connect to problems, TechnoServe was really a great place because it allowed me to connect my past experience as a management consultant and also as someone who has a background in economics to really meet real project needs with development partners. As Cristina, you were mentioning the Toka Fellow program. For that program, I was brought in as a monitoring and evaluation consultant. And this was really a role that allowed me to talk to entrepreneurs and listen to their stories and also be able to assess the impact of the training that Toka Fellow was providing the entrepreneurs. And I think overall it's been a great experience for people out there listening and thinking about volunteering as a fellow. I would highly recommend this experience. I felt very connected to the stories of the entrepreneurs who are making a change in their own communities, but also other fellows like Haley and our other friends around the world and other development practitioners who were really kindred spirits in this development journey. So all around, it was a very inspiring and instrumental part of me thinking about how to go to places that I never thought possible.
Oh, thank you so much. And I think I'm excited for everybody on the discussion to hear more from Dora about where this has now taken her. Haley, how about you?
Well, first, it already excites me to hear from Dora because we had such a great time working abroad, and it just brings up so many fond memories. For me, I think I've always had an interest in working internationally. I majored in international marketing at the University of Washington. But the reason I actually got interested in the TechnoServe and the Tokafala program was through a friend of mine, Denny. She actually introduced me to the program. She was working for TechnoServe at the time. Such an incredible woman. And she spent a significant portion of her year in Mozambique. And she would come back and she would tell me about how rewarding it was to really immerse herself in the culture and how it felt to really make an impact. And when an opportunity arose that kind of fit my skill set, she reached out to me because she knew I had interest in also contributing in that way. And I was connected with Rob, who was the director of the program at the time. And 30 days later, I was on a plane to Botswana. So that was a bit of a surprise of how quickly it all moved for me. I think my first feeling when I arrived on the ground was, wow, it's incredibly hot here. And I'm very tired. And then I can't believe I just moved to Africa. But it was just honestly just such an emotionally rewarding experience. For the next 3 months, Dora and Mary and Zitin and our primarily female cohort actually traveled around Botswana, and we learned more about the individuals in the program, while Dora, Mary, and others sort of captured a lot of the financial perspectives and that were really data driven. I learned a lot about their stories, and I helped them kind of refine a lot of their messaging. And with that data and clear story, they were able to better message who they were, what they've done, and where they were going as a business. And with all of that information, we were able to put together a really significant impact assessment about the program in general, which I believe helped support it get to where it was then and continue for many years to come.
And it must be really rewarding to see now that almost 60% of our entrepreneurs now are women.
So rewarding, such a change.
So speaking of the fact that a large portion of our program participants are now women, Dora, can you share what type of general challenges these women faced in their communities? What did you hear or what did you see?
Yeah, and I think maybe it would be helpful to go back to Cristina when you're sharing about the Toka Fallout program. So just a quick primer about what it's doing. You can think of it as a bootcamp experience for entrepreneurs at large. It provided business skills training, business plan development, mentorship, really helping those who want to grow and develop their own business be successful. And so in this sense, I think Toka Fala was meant to address a capability gaps. And I thought of it as maybe two ways to two different areas of a capability gap. So one would be, table stakes organizational skills to run your own business. This could be bookkeeping, or just managing your accounts and keeping your house in order. And the second is really more nuanced. It's more it's a mindset shift of what it means to be an entrepreneur. So can we address the capability gap of being resilient, perseverant, having grit, having the hustle of what it takes to be an entrepreneur? So I think these are two capability gaps that are barriers. But I do think on the first gap, Tokafala was very effective in helping entrepreneurs, both women and men, nudge themselves in the way of doing the right business. And anecdotally, just looking at the sample or just meeting women entrepreneurs and the entrepreneurs that Tokafala was helping, it felt that organizationally, women are benefiting more than men in the way that they were managing their business. I do recall that a lot of the women entrepreneurs have very, neat very neat system of bookkeeping. They were more organized. It was able to manage a sense of how their business have been trending over time. So I don't want to gender the way that people that maybe skill sets are different, but it does seem that there is the first barrier on managing a business. I think Tokafala has been more effective or helping women have benefited significantly from this program. But I think what's more nuanced is really around this second capability gap, around this mindset shift of now I'm a boss, like I am my own boss and I am going to hustle my way around. And I think this is a more nuanced shift that it could be cultural, could be nuanced, but I think this is a bigger barrier around being a successful business. So why do I say that? I think I noticed a lot of the smaller enterprises had more female representation in them. So we see a lot of one woman show. They are running, beauty spas, graphic design, catering, a lot of micro businesses, and these are great ways for women to, to bring livelihood for their family, to really provide economically. But there is this bottleneck in seeing women own businesses grow to be medium-sized entrepreneurs. And especially in a country like Botswana, where mining and heavy industry is a key part of the economy, how can we address this gap of getting more women, in male-dominated industries, growing into larger businesses that can support more of the economy, more of the jobs? So I think for just empirically in the women that are talking to, it felt like there was a bottleneck here about this second capability gap. And I think there are challenges, maybe perhaps around mentorship, lack of trailblazers. Like if you have a mental model of, this is a woman boss in a male-dominated industry, like it's breaking cultural barriers around who's allowed in these spaces. So I think those were some of the more nuances in really these barriers that women were facing.
Thank you. I really appreciate the framing of the multiple contexts that both men and women face, and then sort of that, as you say, adding that additional nuance to describe in Botswana the way in which a number of challenges can make it more difficult for women, and that then you see them. I liked what you were saying around the hustle and sort of, women, if you need to figure out how to earn an income, you hustle, you enter the sectors that you can enter quickly, the things you know how to do, catering, beauty services, other things like that. But that does present challenges for growth at times, and sort of building up from there. And your last piece about sort of reflecting on, the role modeling and being able to see other women or men in those businesses, in different kinds of businesses, and the role that plays. That makes me connect it. It makes me think about, Haley, what you were doing there. It's sort of this idea around being seen. I know you had a chance to meet a lot of entrepreneurs participating in the program face-to-face. We're coming back to this idea about being seen. Do you have a story of a particular woman entrepreneur that inspired you that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, it was actually pretty interesting. I mean, as you mentioned, I believe 30% were female entrepreneurs at the time. And as Dora said, many of them sort of lean towards industry like beauty and things they were more familiar with. There was one female entrepreneur who was doing something very different than a lot of the other women that we were working with, and which was very impressive to me. Her name was Atamale Kualihi, and I hope I'm saying that right. It's been a couple of years since I've spoken to Setswana, but she was located in a area called Malepale, and she was developing or had developed a sorghum milling company, which is a sort of grain that they produce over there. As she was growing up, she and her family had to drive hours every day. I am apologizing, that is my doorbell ringing, but she had to drive hours every day out to a factory that was in a different village. So weekly, not weekly or daily, they had to go and they had to process this grain in a different village. And as she grew up, she saw this as a real opportunity to build a milling factory in her own village. At first, she approached the Ministry of Trade, where she got a lot of assistance with funding, but this was all money that she had to pay back. So she started pretty small, and her main goal was to really pay back those who had let her borrow that money. She wasn't really thinking, as Dora said, with that mindset that she can sort of break beyond that and beyond just servicing her local village. When she went to a youth expo, she actually met Keva, who was one of our mentors at Tokafala, who was really incredible. And Keva kind of introduced her to the program, took her under her wing as a mentor, and showed her how to do a lot of different things. She showed her how to manage her books. I believe she actually mentioned me. I had a quote where she said, "I wasn't recording anything. I was just keeping it all in my head. I knew I borrowed 500 or 50,000. I had to repay it." And she was like, Keva came in and just looked at my books and was like, "Oh, we have to fix all of this." And so Keva showed her a lot of the structural things that she needed to change to scale her business. She also helped her get a little bit more confidence in expanding beyond her own village. She helped her connect with a lot of local grocery stores, prisons, schools. And so by the time that she left Tokafala, she was actually had I believe it was 4,500% increase in business. And she was expanding all over the country at that point. Which was really incredible for not only for her to see that expansion, like mentally, she was like, I can't believe I did this, but she was continuing to expand like when we last spoke. And one of the things that I think I found most impressive about this situation was that it was a lot of watching women bring up other women. One of her first inspirations was one of the other, women in the country who was running a milling company in a different village, which was incredibly rare, to be honest. And that was someone she didn't know, but she just thought of as an inspiration. And then when she met Keva was her mentor, who was also a female. And so it was just this circle of women helping other women thrive. And I really saw a lot of that in Botswana, where women were leaning in to help either emotionally or physically or financially support other women so that they could see their gender as a whole succeed in that country. And that was probably my most inspirational story from the program.
That was great. I love the idea. Reflecting on, this a simple opportunity in need that she identified in her village, and she pursued it. And now, as you were describing, like she's just like running with it and moving across the country with it, and that's creating those small opportunities to them grow and be much bigger. That's the stuff that inspires me too. Dora, what ripple effects have you seen for the families and communities of successful program participants?
Mm-hmm. And I just also wanted to address one of the questions it seems that went into the chat. Because I think Marcy seems to be a local or familiar with the Botswana area, and was just asking, where were we working, or did we work in villages, and what businesses could you do to help? I think just more context about where we were in Botswana. It was mostly Gaborone and I think Francistown, which were the two largest cities that the commercial activities were, but I think there was another youth program in that
Stride was the youth program that Zitin was running. Yeah, but I'm trying to remember exactly where it was. It was up north. But we did actually travel. I mean, with those two cities as the focal points where we were traveling, we did do a lot in the areas surrounding that as well. So if anything was, say, a 2-hour bus ride outside of that area, we were working with those companies as well. But primarily we were Gaborone and then Francistown and then the surrounding villages.
Yeah.
We can come back to the questions too in the Q&A. So keep them coming, everybody online. Go ahead, Nora.
and then I think that helps to set the context of the ripple effects, because the one thing from Haley's story, and I think a couple other successful businesses, was really these were entrepreneurs that are serving the needs of the community. And a lot of the female, I'm just very inspired by female entrepreneurs going out there and seeing that there's a need in the community. And it's something that I understand and I know, and I can plug a gap. I can serve my community, and I can do it in a way that brings me livelihood. So I think Haley was sharing the story about a sorghum mill, but I think I remember other entrepreneurs, like female entrepreneurs, who are supplying uniforms to their local school. And I think that's because you understand the needs of the community. You're plugged in. You listen to what people need, and because of that, you're able to support things that would otherwise not be met if no one was there to do it. So I really think that's one key ripple effect. Like, you're able, I found it very inspiring that there is a rootedness to the community that has an action towards it. I'm curious to hear other thoughts, but I think another one that would be a ripple effect is mentorship. I think just being able to have a mental image of who can run a business now, like who is boss, and being able to have that mental image broken because you have a model that is modeling out for what it means to be a boss, and being able to bring in others, to mentor others. I think that those are very significant ripple effects.
Yeah. Haley, how has participating in this work on the ground impacted your views of breaking the bias in international development?
I think primarily it taught me that we have a lot more work to do. I think, even in America, there is everyday bias, and it's the difference though is that the bias that, say, I deal with in the tech world is a little bit more subtle. It's still very difficult to break the glass ceiling and reach like the upper echelon of management, and that I think women have to usually put in a lot more of themselves and balance many more things to do that. But that bias is much more clear, I think, when working that you saw in international communities. There are very traditional gender roles in a lot of these villages and communities. And so women were expected to not only manage everything entirely at home, but then that really didn't leave them with the time and the energy, or, as Dora said, like anyone to really look up to as mentors, to encourage them to do more beyond that. And nor were they oftentimes even capable of doing beyond that with the time and energy that they had available to them. They would have to be superheroes. So I think the one thing I really did notice that was very invigorating, I think, to all of us on the team, was that the Stride program that Dora mentioned had a lot of women. And as you can see, like, there are more women entrepreneurs in the program over the years that were kind of changing that narrative. They were really leaning into starting businesses young and leaning into becoming businesswomen. And I think that was a very positive future, like a glimpse into the future of what we could see. But I think overall, it's going to fall, unfortunately, on the hands of a lot of women, like I mentioned, to continue to help mentor and support and lean in to help these women and to inspire them and remind them that they are capable of doing these things. We have a long way to go, but there is a positive trend, both internationally and locally. And so I have faith that we will get there at some point, hopefully soon.
Thanks. And I have one more question. For you. And then hopefully those of you listening online will also add your questions into the chat. So starting with Dora, how did your experience impact your career path and your life moving forward?
Yeah, I think that's a very good reflection question. And it really has, because that was 2018. That was literally 4 years ago.
Yeah.
But I think I would say this, it took a while, or just being supported in this experience to, work in a community that I may not have otherwise heard and understood about. I think it's been such an eye-opening experience and allowed me to imagine, multiple possibilities in a career trajectory and what impact could look like at work. I would say in 2018, like prior to TechnoServe, I felt like I was in a professional rut of sort, because I was a consultant, I was doing management consultant, but the exposures that I was, the kind of work that I was doing in consulting projects, I felt were limited in impact and scope. But I think this experience with TechnoServe allowed me to, meet a wider range of professionals, both in the private and public sector. And I think it was a lot of, there are other ways of, doing work. There are other ways of having an impact. And as a result of this journey, I think I ended up pursuing my master's in public administration and international development at Harvard. And I think it continued to open that conversation of, who else is out there doing good, and that doing good can really come in different forms. I've since graduated from my master's, and I'm now working at Visa within their global strategic initiative team. And this really gives me a perspective on the world that can impact global communities. So very excited, and I look forward to more opportunities or more ways that this career pathway can evolve.
Great. It's really nice to hear sort of the trajectory. Sorry, go ahead, Haley.
No, I was just thinking of Dora and how much we've both grown over the years, and I think a lot of that was stemmed from the TechnoServe program. I think her and I both entered that program in areas in our life when we were looking for a lot of change, and we were looking to feel more inspired in our careers. And I think we were both inspired, at least I was, by not only, the women and the participants on the ground, but also the fellows that were there. I mean, we had some really incredible fellows. We had Zitten, who had come from India, who was really immersing herself in the culture. We had Mary, who was just an absolute boss. And so, I mean, I think we watched these women who were offered these opportunities and really jumped on them. And then we also watched a lot of women who probably could have achieved their potential and what they wanted to achieve in life if they had those mentors. Mm-hmm. And so I think what it taught me was to basically ask for more and ask for help, and to sort of demand more when I came back to the US. So I, went from being a manager, I was actually consulting full time at the time too. And then I came back, and I went from being a manager, and now I'm heading a whole marketing department at a company. So I think it really taught me to ask, not for what I thought I deserved, but probably more than that, because I think a lot of what women think they deserve is a little bit less than what they do deserve. And I think at the end of the day, it really just gave me a lot of courage. And I think watching these women be so courageous inspired me to be more courageous. It also, I think, secondarily reminding me of the importance of mentorship. It's something that I have continued to do heavily. I mentor a lot of young women. I mentor the women who work for me, and I learn from them as well. And it made me realize that this is something that I am very passionate about, and I want to keep doing. And I want them to get farther than I did at every age in life, because they have support. I don't want them to have to go through a lot of the same struggles. And, primarily just empowering me and reminding me about mentorship and what role that really plays for our gender as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, both of you mentioned it multiple times, and as we start to sort of come into a different phase with COVID-19 also, I think those connections, we were talking about this before we started, sort of reminded of those, how important those connections are, and how inspiring they are, how, as you were saying, we lift each other up in many ways. Mm-hmm. All right, so we are now at a Q&A portion of our discussion. And so I invite people to go ahead and continue putting in your questions to the chat. I noticed we have one here that I think is for both Haley and Dora. Were the women suspicious, or were they responsive at first instance? I'm guessing that's about women in Botswana as you approach them to be part of our program.
I would say we weren't one of the ones who traditionally had to approach them. It was the mentors who did. So I think they were less suspicious of them because they were more ingrained in the community. When working with us, I think, of course, you have a bunch of people coming into your country being like, let me ask you all of these questions. But Botswana is full of incredibly friendly people. They are just a really kind people. I mean, Dora and I have so many stories of, me being stuck in a car breakdown in the middle of nowhere where a family picked me up and brought me back, or, We both ended up randomly at one location where we got invited into a family reunion of like 200 people. So I would say maybe initially suspicious, but they were just such kind people and such welcoming people that it wasn't very hard to overcome those suspicions because we truly wanted to help them. None of it was fake. So I think they could see that.
And I think also credit to TechnoServe in developing the kind of, well, Toka Fellow program is like it seems like almost a decade long now. It's been going on for a while. So I think kudos to the infrastructure, to the institutions, to local partners who have developed the trust in the community over time that even though fellowship programs were structured in a short-term period, I do think we come on board with enough of the institutional support and trust and where we're standing on what people are doing in the past to come in and fill that gap. So I think kudos to what the team has been doing in allowing designing arrangement for fellows to come in the short term, but also having very established local projects that run outside of and independent of what fellows are doing.
Great. I don't know if you caught the note there's another chat around about from somebody, Lindsay, I think her name is, who participated also in our fellows program in 2016. So if you haven't had a chance to look at that, there's a note there. I know there was another question about how many countries we operate in. Just as for everybody on the call, TechnoServe operates in almost 30 countries with different types of activities. The one that Haley and Dora describe as one type in our entrepreneurship program, but we have several others, and I invite you to learn more about us on our website at technoserve.org. We have one other question I'm going to ask because I think it dovetails actually nicely to the one we just had around suspicions from women or sort of reactions from women. What about men? How did men react to the program? Or maybe to you? The question was just very broad, so I'll leave it up to you both to decide how you want to go ahead and answer that.
Dora, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I think we can echo the fact that, so I remember sitting in on like a training class, and it was very funny because it felt like it was we definitely have our business advisors who were kudos and very experienced in teaching these skills, and it's just the crowd was men, female. It was entrepreneurs who wanted to learn how to run their own business. And I just remember it being a very a session of eagerness to learn. So it was a lot of pure teaching. It's like, okay, so how do I fill in my accounting? And it's like, oh, but the teacher said this, and no, but the teacher said that. So I feel like it brought together a sense of pure learning. And I think there was and I think and Botswana is a great place to highlight the fact that there is a there are settings where I think the peer learning from both male and female can push the way we taking concepts and bring the learnings of the class more, but other than I think that but I'm curious, like it's there could be other gendered things that perhaps the way I present myself may not be, may have a different presentation to how someone else might have a presentation, but I think that may not be systemic of what interactions would be like.
I will say, so in regards to how we dealt with men in the program. I think the men were really eager. I do think because we were not native to the country, we were treated a little bit differently than the native women. Obviously, I stand out. With the blonde hair, I actually dyed my hair brown when I was there because I felt like I stood out so much. But I think at the end of the day, we came in, especially Mary was incredible, with a very business attitude. It was a very we're here to do business, we're here to have these conversations, do that. And so men were really receptive. I think initially they were a little skeptical of what they were going to get with us, but I think the the confidence, real or not, that we came in with, often, got them in a place of like, okay, they're here to collaborate like coworkers. And so we quickly shifted that attitude. And we honestly just didn't experience a lot of the bias that I think people who are native to the region did, because they knew that, a lot of the culture that we dealt with back home was different than what could be expected there. So they were receptive, but it was definitely, I think we were treated a little bit differently.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much to both of you for joining us today. I appreciate the reflections that you both shared, and the reflection that's obvious that obviously you did yourselves of sort of your experiences and looking back on that. So I really appreciate both of you for sharing your stories. This program is just one example of the importance of women getting the opportunity to gain the skills, knowledge, and access to increase their incomes, and why it's so critical to reducing poverty. And I'll just add, I think it's also, listening to both Dora and Haley, these experiences are good for us too. So not just, women in Botswana, but we get,
that was incredible.
When we get to travel and do these kinds of things, or even in your own work, Haley, you talked about this too, being able to have opportunity to mentor, that it's great for us as well, all women. So all of this is possible to thank from support from people on this call. So I want to thank everybody who joined us today for that. And thank you for being with us on this journey. If you're watching and you haven't had a chance yet to donate to TechnoServe on this International Women's Day, please consider giving generously to transform the lives of even more hardworking women and men around the world. You can do so by visiting technoserve.org/IWD. And thank you for joining us, and happy International Women's Day, everybody.
Happy International Women's Day. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thanks.